I will confess to being an unreconstructed Gerardian. Let me do an alternate cut on one story. And there's one of these Bible stories, and I always think one needs to interpret the Old Testament through the New Testament. This is sort of this is sort of, again, a Christian bias I have, that it doesn't fully make sense on its own. You need to interpret it through in the light of the new. And so there's a passage in the New Testament. I'm not going to I don't have the verse memorized, but it's basically where Christ says one must have faith like a child. And then it's again, you can think it's like an abstract thing, but maybe it's again, we should always think more concretely. And the concrete question I would have is there a faith of a child that's being highlighted as especially noteworthy and worthy of emulation? And I think there is, in fact, one child whose faith gets described in the Old Testament, and we never seem to talk about it, and it's Isaac. Because as they're going up the mountain, Abraham tells Isaac this fictional story that maybe God will provide something else, and that's what might happen. And then Isaac just believes that. Abraham believes he has to make sacrifice. That's the delusional faith of an adult who's read too much Kierkegaard or something. And Isaac's is the true Christian faith, that God will figure out a way where the sacrifice doesn't need to happen. God is not a violent God. The violence doesn't come from God. He's a loving God, and there's a way to do this without sacrifice. And I'm always, what I find so odd about the Abraham-Isaac story is that we've written endless amounts has been written on the faith of Abraham, or Abraham is seen as the iconic person with faith, and it's again linked to a certain conception of sacrifice, and yet we have the line in the New Testament where Christ tells us to look at the faith of a child. Maybe you can come up with a better example. I think the concrete one is Isaac, and
it is interesting that it's not written from his perspective.
But we get enough of Isaac's perspective implicitly in the story. That it's all the reviews, when we talk about, whose faith should we emulate? The theologians, the philosophers, they always tell us you need to emulate the faith of Abraham. The way I understand Christ, I understand him to be telling me to emulate the faith of Isaac, which I think is very different, and maybe also very different on this question of sacrifice. Okay. There always are questions how one interprets the Christian account. I believe in the physical resurrection of Christ, both as an event that happened historically, but also as a promise. And in some sense, following Christ, there may be all sorts of bad things that happen to you, but it's a rational trade for saving your soul and for having eternal life. And so if you think of it in the context of saving your soul and eternal life, we can call that a sacrifice, but it has a very different character.
Right, that's why he says his yoke is light, which is a weird thing to say when it's an invitation to the cross.
But you have to, the non-sacrificial way I would say it is, if you believe in a literal, eternal life, that's one sort of thing. If you think these are just some sort of Jungian archetype story, then you end up with much more of sacrifice qua sacrifice as a really high value. But that's why I would always interpret the Orthodox Christian message as very anti-sacrificial, very non-sacrificial. And maybe I don't like the word rational, but just you're making a good choice, a wise choice.